25th birthday. I hope you've been enjoying the slideshow and that you've maybe seen pictures of yourself or of people that you know. I know I always enjoy looking at old Peace Council photos. My name is Ursula, and I'm on staff at the Peace Council. I've been here on staff since December, but I got involved in 2008.
And my name's Andy Major, and I'm one of Ursula's co-workers along with Carol Baum and Jessica Maxwell. And we're delighted to have all of you here to celebrate 75 years of educating, agitating, and organizing for peace and social justice. It's been an amazing year so far. We started with Harry Belafonte, had Noam Chomsky with an overflow crowd at Nottingham High School in the spring, Katrina vanden Heuvel a couple of weeks ago, today with Mike Bonanno of the Yes Men, and then Amy Goodman coming right up. So, like many things that are local, I think we often don't appreciate what we have here in Syracuse. In addition to the tremendous legacy of social activism and thinking that long predates the Peace Council, we need to remember that we are indeed the oldest local, continuously active peace and social justice organization in the United States. And that's something to celebrate. Through those 75 years, there's been a lot of issues we've addressed, a lot of campaigns that we've been involved in. But there are a couple of themes that go throughout that 75-year history, that indeed we as individuals, we as a community, we as citizens have a responsibility to stand up, to get involved, to force government officials and power brokers to follow the will of the people. The Peace Council was formed with that concept in an effort to try and prevent World War II, and we've continued working in that vein regardless of the issues, whether it's been the Vietnam War or dealing with McCarthyism or nuclear power. We continue that same thrust, and as we work to support the Occupy movement currently, again, that continues to be a thrust of what we do and what we'll do long into the future. An organization that's been around this long has people who've been part of it for a very long time. So I'd like to ask people to sort of show us where you fall into the historic sweep of the Peace Council. So I'd like anyone who got involved with the Peace Council during our first quarter century, so from 1936 to 61, to stand up, please. Quarter century from 1962 to 1986. Please stand. And anyone who's gotten involved during the most recent quarter century from 1987 until the present, please stand. To be reckoned with. And the Peace Council, like any organization, at times people identify it with staff or with people in leadership, in the steering committee or other active committees. But indeed, the Peace Council has continued with the support of the people in this room and many hundreds of others who aren't here tonight. And for that, we all are greatly appreciative. I'm going to speak a little about some of our current projects within your program, which we hope all of you have gotten. A program is much more detailed, or you can see the recent Peace newsletter. But I'm going to highlight 3 areas. The first is our anti-war work, which has always been a major focus of the organization, ending the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And of course, part of our role is to remind people that despite Barack Obama's recent announcement There are still plans to keep several thousand military contractors in Iraq, and our work will continue to bring that war to a full close. We've also been working to help people understand the terrible danger of robotic warfare with these drones, which are piloted from Hancock Field, and have been involved both locally and regionally to educate people and to resist this horrific new war-making innovation. And then the last piece of our anti-war work is within the high schools, to try and reach out to young people, particularly in the Syracuse City schools, to be sure that they know that what the military recruiters are telling them is not the full truth, and that they have other alternatives for a future life besides going down the path of the military. Our Neighbors of the Onondaga Nation project has been working for well over a decade in solidarity with the people of the Onondaga Nation to educate our community and build support for recognition of the crimes that we have committed against them and to seek justice for them. And part of that as well is to clean up the environment that's so important to all of us. A major current piece of that is working to stop the threat of hydrofracking in New York State. So we encourage all of you to get involved. Lastly, the Peace Council seeks every venue we can find to get the word out. We use old media. The Peace newsletter has been published. We're about 810, number 810, so nearly monthly for 75 years. But we're also using Facebook, the internet, email, even Twitter more recently. So we really want to combine the old and the new, as well as always pushing the corporate media to cover what's important, what people are doing, what people care about, rather than just what the corporations want people to read about. So Ursula is now going to tell you a little bit more about how you can get involved or get more involved for those of you who are already active. So thanks very much, and look forward to a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Andy. So how to get more involved? Everyone has, I know everyone has busy lives. You know, activists tend to be those types that are overcommitted and doing a lot. But you know, the Peace Council needs you, because this isn't an organization that's made up of 4 staff people and a steering committee. It's made up of staff people, steering committee, 3 different anti-war committees, Neighbors of the Onondaga Nation, CNY Working for a Just Peace in Israel and Palestine, there's the Caribbean Latin America Coalition. We have a number of committees that are listed in the program and in the front cover of the Peace newsletter. And these committees only work if there's people that that care about these issues that join and get involved and are around to do the work. So I would encourage you to stop by. We have an info table outside of this, I think it's called the sanctuary. Outside the sanctuary, there's an info table. You can stop by and grab a newsletter. We have sign-up sheets there, and if you're not on our, even if you are on our email list, but you just haven't really been very involved recently, come by, put your name down, and one of us on staff will give you a call within the next week, and we can talk about different ways to get involved. Our office hours are 10 to 5 Monday through Thursday, and 10 to 2 on Fridays, so you can always drop in and talk to whoever's around about what's going on, how to get involved, talk about issues that they're bothering you or that you're passionate about. We have tons of events coming up throughout the fall, so a good way to get started getting involved is just to come to an upcoming event. Andy mentioned Amy Goodman's coming on November 3rd. Not everyone listens to Democracy Now! Not everyone is able to break out of the corporate media. Bring a friend to a Peace Council event next time and expose them to some of the work that we're doing. This November 1st, I don't know how many people, I think everyone probably knows by now that in April there was a civil disobedience action at Hancock Field, and 37 folks were arrested for blocking the entrance to the base where the drones are maintained. November 1st, the trial begins for the Hancock drone resistors. And these are folks, that are they're basically putting their bodies on the line to send a message to folks in York does not want to be a participant in this kind of robotic drone warfare. And they need your support to say that it's not just the 37 folks that were arrested, but that there's a large community in Syracuse that is paying attention and that cares. It's on these orange sheets on the info table. You can grab one of these and you can stick it up, in your lobby at work, in the coffee shop, in your faith community. We always have tons of flyers, and the best way to spread the word about the work we're doing is to put it somewhere. Because, me, Andy, and Jess and Carol, we don't know all the different places people hang out and work. So, you put it up somewhere where you're working or hanging out. Also, more upcoming events. The Caribbean Latin America Coalition is going to be hosting a speaker, an organizer from Colombia. Folks in Ithaca, Cortland, and Syracuse for about 7 years have been maintaining a relationship with the small farmers movement of Cajibio, Colombia. And one of their organizers is going to be visiting Central New York on Monday for 2 weeks. And we're going to be hosting a talk at SU and at La Casita Cultural Center on November 2nd. So you can also stop by the table, grab a flyer, come yourself, or bring a friend. And also, Andy mentioned that we're supporting the Occupy Syracuse movement, which is connected to Occupy Wall Street. Folks, there's a group of young people that is occupying the plaza behind the main bus stop in downtown Syracuse, right in front of Chase Bank and across from Merrill Lynch. And, a lot of folks are asking, well, how can we support these people? What do they need? Should we give them money, blankets? And they want bodies there. They want people to come talk to them and talk to them about all the different issues that we care about, and to start a dialogue and start coming up with action. So that's Occupy Syracuse, and they have general assemblies every night at 6:30, so you can go check it out and participate. And then I'll also mention that Andy mentioned that Neighbors of the Onondaga Nation is working to stop the horrible threat that is hydrofracking in New York State. It looks like on Monday, the Syracuse Common Council is set to pass a citywide ban on hydrofracking and a ban on treating hydrofracking wastewater in Syracuse. And we would be, I believe, the third city in New York State to pass such a ban. So it's very important, if folks are able to come out on Monday at 1 to the Common Council vote. It'll be followed by a press conference, because we really need to show Governor Cuomo that New Yorkers across, folks across New York State do not want this to happen in New York. So also on the back table, these little green sheets, just a reminder, if you're forgetful like me. So I think that's all for upcoming events, and I know that we have a speaker. So I'll leave it at that, but please, on your way out, stop by the info table, say hi, and stay connected.
Okay, so we're walking that fine line now between anticipation and impatience. And I hope you're all excited for our speaker tonight. I know many of you are already familiar with their work, but when Andy was talking a little bit about the focus on media and our work to get our issues and our work covered by the corporate media, I think a lot of activist groups have really struggled with the changing media landscape, with a lot of even our major corporate media outlets having staff cutbacks and resource cutbacks, and them being challenged with how do we cover things and continue to do our work in the advent of social media, and how do we take advantage of that? All these new tools open to us, and yet less and less do we see our issues covered the way we want them in the corporate media. It's not like the Vietnam era where you saw body bags coming home and you really saw that in the media, on the nightly news. We don't see that anymore. And I think our speaker tonight and the work that he's been doing with the Yes Men activist team has really pushed things to a new level and has inspired some of those of us on the left to think in new ways about how we can reach people and how we can use the media to our advantage, and how we can kind of up our game a little bit to really try and make a difference and try and reach a way wider audience. So if you're not familiar with their work, just a few highlights. They got invited to be on BBC World News Live to speak in front of 300 million viewers as representatives of Dow Chemical. This is an example of the scale of work that can be done by a couple of lefty activists with a supportive community of resourceful and skilled people who don't have a lot of fear or have a sense that we should be bounded by what we're told we can or can't do. So, without further ado, I'd love to bring up here Mike Bonanno of the Yes Men.
Thank you. I feel like I should be applauding for you, though. I just watched this amazing slideshow and seen those images on the tables out there. 75 years. Happy birthday. It is inspiring to see resistance to this system, this violent system that's being forced upon us. And I think those fires of resistance have been burning, and at times they burn brighter than others. And I'm really happy that for the first time in my life, I feel a real sense of optimism. And this is simultaneous to what perhaps is the most pessimistic moment in history. I mean, unless maybe you were a Neanderthal and you were just being clubbed over the head by a Cro-Magnon, right? I mean, right now, we're faced with issues that only 3 weeks ago seemed insurmountable. You know, whether it is the continuing economic divide that prevents us from having social justice, or whether it is the environmental catastrophes, fracking being a part of that system that's totally threatening the future, threatening the planet itself with climate change. These things were very depressing only a month ago. But today, I feel like the energy is coalescing, right? People are moving. People are putting in a lot of hard work to make something happen that's different than a victory celebration. I mean, we had a victory celebration when Obama was elected. It was fantastic. I was in New York. I was in Brooklyn. There was a massive party on the street. The streets were filled with people who were hugging each other. And I'd never seen strangers go up to each other on the street and hug each other for any reason, let alone African American people hugging white people for, just because we won. I mean, that happens at sporting events occasionally, but it's a little different. This was everybody on the street, and everybody feeling like they'd done something, but it was a victory celebration. It wasn't the beginning of something. And although I know that this isn't the beginning, I mean, the Occupy movement isn't the beginning because it's built on the shoulders of everything that you all have done for the last 75 years and people before you did. It feels like it has the potential to be a real beginning, a beginning for a lot of people that I talk to every day who felt hopeless. And when I say people I talk to every day, I teach at a university. And a lot of the students in the university that I teach at is called RPI. And it's a tech school. Most of the time I've been teaching there, I've taught there for 12 or 13 years. Most of the time that I've been teaching there, most of the kids didn't give a shit. They simply were in there to get their job. But in the last 3 years, I began to see a change. And the change in part comes out of change in awareness, but there's also cultural change. It's a tech school and hacking is in the news, right? There's groups like, there's WikiLeaks, right? And WikiLeaks is pulling away. It's revealing a lot of secrets, right? So it's breaking some of the illusion. But then there's groups like Anonymous, these hackers groups, these young anonymous hackers who suddenly have political convictions. And that's fantastic because all of a sudden it's tied into youth culture, and all of these geeky kids who have been teaching for years and trying to get excited about politics are now part of a culture. It's a culture that walked down to Wall Street and sat down and said, we're going to stay. And it's happening everywhere. And so, I'm really excited to be here. This is part of a thing that's growing, and I know everybody here is already putting in hard work. That is an amazing list of things to do in the next few weeks. I wish I was sticking around to participate, but I'll be heading back to Occupy Albany. There are things to do everywhere. And I'm really excited to see what's happening here in terms of the resistance to fracking. I hope that can be overturned. I hope that can be stopped, not only in New York State, but elsewhere. It's quite encouraging. Around the world, there are places coming together to stop it. France bans fracking altogether. In Poland right now, there is a major struggle. And there are a lot of rural people who are rising up in Poland. Rural people who have actually, not so non-violently, said that they're going to kill whoever comes on their property with a drilling rig. So, that's more of a self-defense thing, right? And I think that, reaching out to the farming community, looking for where the agricultural community wants to defend their land is really important. It's something that's happening very much in Europe, and it needs the virus of that kind of infection needs to spread. So, that can only spread, though, if we change some of the rules that are forcing a lot of the people who are desperate into poverty, the poverty that's forcing them to say, I'd like to take, fracking as an option, right? Because what other reason could there be for wanting somebody to come and remove the last bits of resources underground in your land and take it away and leave you with nothing? I don't know. It's a pretty strange bargain. But I'll explain a little bit about the Yes Men. I know not everybody here knows what we do. What we've done over the years, and it happened quite by accident, is we've impersonated captains of industry, people who are considered important in the world of late capitalism. We've infiltrated their events, we've gone to their business meetings, we've sometimes gotten on television, and there we have used that momentary opportunity, that moment when people thought we were the most important people in the room, to do one or two things. One thing was that we would create a satirical vision of the present that we thought would wake people up. So, just as an example, we were invited as the World Trade Organization to attend a conference in Tampere, Finland. The conference was on textiles in the future. It was about textiles and textiles trade. That's why they wanted the WTO there. We went and we announced that the WTO had a new technology for controlling remote workforces that took care of the worker management problem, which was, of course, that workers didn't have enough control over those people in sweatshops. And we had a breakaway business suit built. So I ripped the suit off of Andy in one fell swoop, and then he pulled a little ripcord, so he was wearing a gold lame suit underneath, like a bodysuit, a leotard, bright gold. And he pulled a little ripcord, and out sprung a giant 3-foot-long golden phallus. And on the end of the golden phallus, there was a little TV screen. And he explained to everybody in the audience that this was the WTO's answer to the problems that we face with labor today. By viewing the sweatshop workers in the little monitor and giving them electric shocks, he would be able to control them no matter where he was, and finally we could have leisure again in the equation. In a world where leisure or time has been eroded over the years, this was the answer. So this is in the spirit of Jonathan Swift's The Modest Proposal, right? It's satire. And what we do with that afterward is we videotape it. We have a photographer there take pictures, and then we send it out in press releases just the way a corporation would. We create our own media. And then that story gets picked up and read by other people who enjoy laughing for a moment at the policies of the WTO and laugh along with us. Now, the show is not for the audience in that arena. The group of textiles trade experts, the delegates to the European Union, they weren't important for it, but the shocking thing for us always is that those audiences don't notice the satire. They still come up and they ask for our business cards. They do. They still want to meet the most important people in the room. They're still not willing to stick their neck out, even if they think what we said was really wrong or very strange or surreal. And the reason why they don't, well, there are probably a few reasons. First of all, the first and primary reason is that the system that we already have is so violent, so absurd, and so corrupt, and the arguments that hold it up are so flimsy, that it's not a big surprise to see somebody with a 3-foot-long golden phallus giving shocks to sweatshop workers in the developing world. So that's one explanation, but another is that maybe they're just too polite. Maybe it's this sort of business meeting environment and everybody, is sort of, there's a consensus that everybody engages in, and you just don't want to interrupt. Maybe they just need the business card so bad that they sit there in their seat and don't do anything. Or there's also the possibility that they don't notice, right? That they just are zoning out, they're asleep. But we actually were able to test that once by sending them all the delegates email. We told them that the speaker at the conference, the delegate from the WTO, had died due to injury sustained when an activist threw a pie in his face on his way out. And so then we said it was a criminal investigation, and we were like, we were being pretty relaxed about our own sense of ethics then. We didn't feel bad about it. But we didn't actually think of Dr. Andreas Bickelbauer from the WTO as a live, living person. We thought of him as this person we made up. But what we found is that there was an outpouring of grief from the people who had met Dr. Bickelbauer. And the sad part was that they could recall in exact detail what he had said. So it wasn't that they weren't awake, it was that basically they were willing to go along with it, along with whatever was going on. And I think that this is the case. We've been conditioned to go along with things, and if you participate, if you have to do your job every day, go to work every day, make enough money to put food on the table, it can numb you to some extent. So a lot of what we do is about trying to shock ourselves out of this numbing sensation, out of this environment that has allowed us to participate in a violent consensus, to have things like the war in Iraq and Afghanistan without a massive number of people rising up. And I think that this is a moment when we might be changing that. Things might be shifting. The consensus might not align with the ideas of that 1%. We're seeing that. 54% of the population supports Occupy Wall Street. Yeah. So the other mode that we operate in as the Yes Men is when we get into that position of power, when people think that we're the WTO or think that we're the representative from Dow Chemical or the head of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, a representative of the federal government. When an audience thinks that, we've come to the decision that it was maybe more interesting to use that moment of power to announce the vision that we'd like to see for the planet, right? So instead of indulging in the nightmare, instead of creating a satirical vision, dark humor, we would just say, okay, we're the WTO and we think it's a good idea to dissolve the WTO because it was a mistake, right? We just realized this, we've been going along with it and things have been going downhill and, we've been pushing for these free market policies and it's clear to many people that it's not working, especially to the victims of those policies. So we've got a new plan. It's called the Trade Regulation Organization. And instead of helping businesses do business, we're going to put business in the service of people and the environment, right? Now, surprise, surprise, it turns out that if you say that in front of a group of experts, they don't object to it, they agree. And not only do they agree, but they agree emphatically and enthusiastically. We said that to a group of experts in Australia. It was a group of high-level accountants, the type of people who hide money for GE, for example, offshore. And these guys it was like they breathed a great big sigh of relief. It was like suddenly they had license to follow another set of rules, and they knew how to do it. We didn't know how. They told us how. They mobilized themselves in the luncheon afterward. They had a lavish luncheon planned for us. They were wining and dining the WTO reps. But instead of just sitting there and having small talk and trading business cards, they formed working groups. And they told us how to restructure the WTO so that it could work for people in the environment. So that was both liberating and depressing. It was liberating because it was an affirmation that we're all human, right? It's like, yes, those things that we teach our kids, up until they're about 6 or 7 or 8, about not hitting each other, these sort of very standard things. You can meet the most conservative person on the playground with your kids, and that person won't be telling his kid, go rub that other kid's face in the ground, kill that kid now. They'll be like, no, share, they'll say the same things. I mean, if you put the 3-year-old in charge of the planet, they would do a better job than the system that we've got now. And they would do it because they know these rules that they're being taught by everybody. With a few limited exceptions. There are a few psychopaths out there, but you can find the videos on the internet, kidfights.com. Don't bother. The point is, it's easy enough to see that where we have common ground, and if we could apply those same set of moral and ethical guidelines to what we do in the world and strip away the complexity, just look at who's being victimized, who's benefiting, who's losing, and try to fix it where people are losing, we would stand to benefit a great deal. Now, our version of doing that is not for everybody. What we do is, some people see as risky, but I'll let you in on a big secret. It's not. We've never gotten in trouble for doing this. Not even a little bit. We have been sued once, and I'll show you a little video about that. But being sued is not a bad thing. There's a misconception. I grew up being afraid of being sued. Believe it or not, as a child in the 70s and 80s, this was a fear that you could develop as a kid. Everybody knew. And how did you know? You know because you go to the playground and one day, there is no longer the zip line that used to be there. And you say, why is there no longer a zip line there? That was my favorite thing to play on, and then with all my liabilities, somebody's gonna get sued. And you live with this, why is there suddenly a fence on the edge of the cliff over here? We always used to be able to walk to the edge and dangle our feet off and eat a sandwich. This was a picnic spot, and now there's a fence, and no, they were worried about getting sued. So we've grown up with this, we've internalized this, we worry about it. We don't make moves about it. I talk to my students, and now they're in college and they're worried about getting sued. It's like, you're a college student. What are you worried about? But I think that now this new generation is coming up, starting to get bolder. They're not worried about getting sued. Those activists from Anonymous, the lulzsec kids, the ones who are all getting arrested all over the place, they're obviously not worried about getting sued. And they're being prosecuted for terrorism-related charges, which is crazy talk. But they're not afraid anymore because they see what's at stake. And because they're beginning to see where the sort of risks are, just the phantom risks, where they're just trumped up. I'm being sued. I can admit, I have an admission to make. I'm being sued, and it's okay. I can say that in front of you now. Anybody else here being sued? No? Okay, well, we can have a smaller working group where you can admit it, and it's okay. But we have to get used to this. We have to embrace it. And some activists have embraced it, and they've made a very good platform of it. The famous McLibel duo, who would just hand out pamphlets outside of McDonald's, telling people that the McDonald's hamburgers were destroying the rainforest and destroying their health. They got sued, and they spent the next 5 years fighting McDonald's in court, and instead of handing pamphlets to 100 people a day, they talked to 100 million people a day in the media. And during that time, McDonald's lost big time. They closed restaurants in the UK. It was a total disaster for them. And so, I think it's a badge of honor to get sued. So I hope I encourage somebody here to get sued. And if you do get sued, you can call up for advice. We have support groups and all that, I'm going to show you a video. One of the things that we realized, though, we've been acting kind of as originally as sort of vigilantes, When we were part of the anti-globalization movement, it was very easy to justify our what we were doing because it fit into this very broad movement of many yeses, right, and one no. So there are a lot of people saying different things in the same thing in different ways, working toward a similar goal, which is fighting the global trade regime that was disenfranchising so many and destroying the environment. And it was easy to be a part of that and do our own thing, but after that fell apart, and it fell apart only partially, but it got destroyed in part by what happened after 9/11 and the crackdown on public protest. And we had to find a new way of working because it no longer made sense to be doing our own little thing as part of a global movement. So we ended up working with whoever came through the door. Greenpeace contacted us, and they said, "We want you to work with us, but don't tell anyone." We said, "Okay." They're okay with it now, by the way. I think the statute of limitations has passed or something. Not that we do anything illegal. Another common misperception, and it often ends up in print. The yes men do illegal things, the yes men do risky things. Not true. As far as I know, we've never done anything illegal. I mean, when I say as far as I know, we ask lawyers sometimes, and they usually say, "I don't know." So, in what country? In Saudi Arabia? Probably. In the US? Probably not. But the only way to find out is to do it, and since what you're doing is ethically or morally justified, go ahead and find out. I'm not your lawyer, though. That's usually what they say. I'm not your lawyer. All right, but what we do is create media spectacles. We try to get issues in the media in creative ways, and we found that better than being a sort of hit-and-run vigilante activist, we could hook up with organizations that had ongoing campaigns and create a little publicity push at just the right moment for their campaign. So that event that was mentioned where we represented Dow Chemical and announced that finally, after 20 years, they were going to clean up the mess in Bhopal that they'd inherited from Union Carbide and compensate the victims. When we did that announcement on the BBC, it was successful, but it was successful largely because there was a movement behind it. We were doing it as part of a campaign. And the campaign was a concerted effort to get people to identify the name Dow Chemical with the Bhopal catastrophe because they were trying to escape the liability, right? By buying Union Carbide, they thought they could buy the assets and avoid the liabilities through this sort of quick switcheroo. And they weren't able to do that because of the hard work of the activists on the ground in Bhopal. These are the Bhopal victims who are an inspiring story and have kept going more than 25 years now fighting. And because of groups like Greenpeace that had corporate accountability campaigns and saw that that was a really important issue at that moment. So anyway, about a year ago we decided we were going to systematize it. We're going to create a little school for media ninjas. A way to, a more sort of a standardized process for doing this, and we call it the Yes Lab. And last year alone, we did about 12 or 14 projects, actions with different activist groups. And I'm just going to show you a little promo video about the Yes Lab, and then I'll show you one action that we did with one of the groups as well. Now, I apologize ahead of time for a little bit of funny sounding audio. I got to see if this works, but I think it's all good. Yeah, it's on, it's just quite low.
Hi, my name is Mike.
And I'm Andy.
And we are the Yes Men.
Yeah, you may have heard of the Yes Men because of some of the things we've done in the past.
Like this.
Dow is accepting full responsibility for the Bhopal catastrophe.
We want something that's going to be able to save a human being no matter what Mother Nature throws at it. This is the answer.
Iraq war ends.
1.2 million of these fake papers printed and passed out by thousands of volunteers.
Today we're launching Balls Across America.
They serve up satirical humor laced with lunacy to call the media's attention. Who are you?
We are with a group called the Yes Men.
A lot of people see the kind of things we've been doing over the years, and they want to do similar things for their cause.
That's why we started the Yes Lab.
The Yes Lab is a way for us, the Yes Men, to help all kinds of progressive activist groups carry out media-getting creative actions.
Here's how it works. An organization, say US Uncut, calls us up.
They have a goal, say, to point out that GE hasn't paid its taxes.
Together we brainstorm the best way for the organization to get the most press attention possible.
Then, the organization works on the project with our guidance. Finally, the action works, and the organization gets its ideas out in public.
This morning, a story crossed the Associated Press saying that General Electric was going to pay back a $3.2 billion tax refund. The stock moved when that story crossed the wires.
They have all the makings of a major news story.
The guys behind the print, they call themselves US Uncut, who work with grassroots group, the Yes Men.
I pay my taxes, why doesn't GE? That's where the impulse came to do this prank.
In its very first year, the Yes Lab helped activist organizations embarrass Canada for their disastrous environmental policy.
The world was laughing at Canada because of a press release.
Demolish Chevron's $80 million greenwashing campaign.
To counter the Chevron spots, an activist group created these spoof ads.
Make the U.S. Chamber of Commerce very angry indeed.
I'm Aaron Wolfley with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This guy is a fraud, he's lying.
And highlight the health effects of coal plants on children.
The victim of this hoax is Peabody Energy. The website claims it wants to make asthma cool by making their inhalers cool.
The organizations that we work with have been very happy with the results, and more importantly, they now know how to do it again themselves.
Now that we know that the Yes Lab can work, we're ready to officially launch. But we're missing one key ingredient, a budget for new Yes Lab projects. So if you want to see lots more action like what you've heard about here,
See your business card?
Can I see yours?
please chip in on Kickstarter.
And we're always looking for people to come join in the fun. So if you want to try something, write to us at this address here.
Okay, so that's better. So that's just a little video about the Yes Lab. By the way, that was for it was a fundraiser we were doing on Kickstarter, the crowdsourcing funding platform. That's why it has a little appeal at the end. Tonight there's an appeal for Peace Council, I believe, right? So yeah, please give to that. Anyway, you can see a few of the things we've been up to there, and I'm going to show you another video. One that we put together this project with a group called the Avaz Action Factory. Now, the Action Factory was a subgroup of Avaz. It was a group of young people. There were about 15 or 20 of them. and they were doing climate activism in D.C. They were all living in a house in D.C., and they were trying to do anything that they could to push Congress to vote in a smart way on climate regulation. And of course, the big enemy of climate regulation and just about anything else, it seems, is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They had identified them as somebody who we should work on. And, it was funny because, me and Andy, we'd been doing this kind of thing for years, but the Chamber of Commerce wasn't really on the radar for us, even though you'd expect that it would be, but the largest lobbying organization in the world. And when this group came to us and said, we want to do something about the Chamber, we were like, the Chamber? Isn't that like the thing where, in every small town there's an old person sitting behind the counter who's offering to help show you around or show you a map? And they just shook their heads. These are like 20-year-olds who are like, what? Where have you guys been all these years? And they told us about it, and we realized, okay, this is exactly why the Yes Lab makes sense. They were working in a very precise way on this particular issue. They knew that the Chamber needed pressure at that precise moment because a lot of larger companies were already defecting from the Chamber based on their stance around climate issues. There was a large campaign going on to try to force the Chamber to change its position. And so this is the action that we ended up with.